Welcome to another CHRO Conversation, hosted by the Center for Executive Succession at the Darla Moore School of Business. I'm your host, Anthony Nyberg, and today we are viewing a compilation of interviews on the role of ESG in organizations. In this video, we get to learn from Tim Richmond, Executive Vice President and CHRO of AbbVie, Lucian Alziari, the Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer of Prudential Financial, Christian Meisner, CHRO of GE Aerospace, and he was the CHRO of Kaiser Permanente when we conducted this interview. Beth Powers, CHRO of Clarios, and she was the CHRO of ATI when we conducted this interview. Ola Snow, Chief Human Resource Officer for Cardinal Health. Tom Plath, SVP HR and Global Citizenship of International Paper. Monique Harena, who is the Chief Colleague Experience Officer at American Express. Ernest Marshall, CHRO of Eaton. And Craig Hademek, the current CHRO of USIC, and he was the Senior VP and CHRO for Milliken & Company when we conducted this interview.
Well, I think in particular it depends a little bit by industry. We all have when you think of the environmental or the governance piece in particular, there's some elements around what industry are you in, what literally is your footprint on the broader communities where you live and work or around the world. For us, probably the bigger word is around sustainability and the social element. And so we definitely spend more time on it. We've got certain pieces built into our incentive plans to reinforce it for our leaders. But we put out a sustainability report. It describes our ESG strategy and our approaches. It describes what we're committed to in terms of, again, being good stewards of our environment, being good stewards of our communities where we live and work. So ESG is going to be an area that if you're an HR professional today, whether you're just joining, you will have this in your remit. This is an important area. It's not just enough to manage your workforce and your company's performance. You've got to be in tune with the external, and you have to have capability in that space. I can't do everything. So what are my priorities? So again, I would say probably some of what could be industry specific, some could be company specific. Some of it goes back to what's your strategy, right? So I think there's a lot of life cycle elements. I also think kind of what does your company stand for and believe in? So we've talked about our principles before as an anchoring element in our company. If things are aligned to our principles, we're going to care more about doing them. When we think about our philanthropy, we're going to think about how that giving is aligned to one of our principles, or that's aligned to one of our therapeutic areas from a patient perspective for patients that we support around the world with our medicine. So a lot of that has to go through a filter of business, philosophy, your kind of your areas of interest and focus, and then otherwise you'll just exhaust yourself if you're not clear, because what you'll find is that I want to focus on my business and be a good steward around ESG. But if I'm solely focused on all the external, I'm not spending enough time on what we're trying to do from a business perspective. Well, there's a little bit of friction in the news, if you will, right? From some investors saying, well, we don't want you to go too far, or I want you to care about it, but not so much, because I'm an investor, I want a return on my investment. So there are some pushing and pulling forces around this issue. And I think, again, you want to be clear, what's our strategy, what's our approach, what do our investors care about? What do our communities care about? And trying to find this balance. I always think like that's a word we don't often think of enough, right, in HR. Like, what's the balance we're trying to find around all these issues? And I think when we struggle sometimes, we haven't worked hard enough to figure out where that is. The problem I see sometimes is the pendulum swings too hard. And sometimes when companies struggle is they're swinging hard to an investor issue, swinging too hard to an external issue, and you'd say, wait a minute, somewhere in here is this balance I'm looking for. But you'd like to think overall that business could stay focused on the business. But what ESG tells us, and what many employees tell you is, that's not enough, I want more. So it will reinforce, I think, go project to the future, companies more and more and more on the ESG front, and there's some social and governance elements there to be really mindful of, but even almost more so, where's the advocacy, right? What can you project and make a difference on in your community, but also at a broader level? Whatever you say or don't say, whatever you do or don't do says a lot in its own way, right? And that's one of the things that we've talked a lot about as a company, right? A non-response to that issue is a response, and people have an opinion about it. I think it creates a dilemma, and I don't have the magic answer for everyone, but I do know that some companies have clearly taken sides, and again, with a strength of conviction, they can do that. And you're right, though. There's going to be people that cheer that and support that. There's others who are going to say, I actually don't agree with that. And whether it's on the consumer side, I'm no longer going to purchase that product, or an employee who says, I'm not going to choose to work for that company. So there's risk to all that. And I think that somewhere in there is that balance of, I would like to think, and maybe I'm just more of an optimist than that, but I'd like to think that if we have clarity on principles, again, talk about serving communities, we talk about embracing diversity and inclusion, we can talk about, again, in our company, how the how is equal to the what. People see enough about, this is a great company, you have strong people leadership, a strong culture, high levels of engagement. I don't need to wonder. That's actually my real dream, is that people don't have to ask, because they know what our company believes in, what we stand for. And I think a lot of that goes back to the patients that we serve. But that's my hope, is that we've done enough over time to reinforce that belief so people trust us to say, I like my company, I like what we do and we do it well.
It's fundamental to who we are. And so, we have a very clear purpose as a company. We've done quite a lot of work on, what's the role that we play within the world. I don't think you can be a successful company unless you are a good neighbor. Newark has been our home for pretty much 150 years. It will be in 18 months' time. And there have been times when other companies chose to leave Newark. We've been very committed to Newark. It'll be our home, I think, forever. It's actually something that is a real rallying point for our employees. They're proud to work for a company that is a good citizen, that is helping the local community to grow and thrive. There were lots of debates over the years about the nature of capitalism and should it all just be the focus on the shareholder. And I believe good companies always knew that you will achieve your best returns for shareholders over the long term if you're a good citizen, if you are committed to the growth and development of your people, if you are a good player within the world in terms of environment and all of the sort of the ESG debate that's going on. And so I think that notion of it became the balanced scorecard, but that was just another expression of there are multiple constituencies that we need to pay attention to within a company, and all of them are important, and one is never so important that you forget about all of the others. If you think about the experience that so many of us had through the pandemic, through COVID, it really forced us to come back to, well, what is it that we really believe? Because we were facing a lot of challenges. And we came back to, we're going to take care of our employees first. Their health and safety is number one priority. If we do that, they will take care of customers. If you take care of customers, generally over the long term, companies that take care of their customers have very good financial outcomes for shareholders. And so having that set of beliefs, which isn't a belief in one, it's a belief in how you serve several, but sometimes there's a sequencing that comes with that. I think that's very helpful and can provide a compass sometimes when you're in these more difficult waters.
And in fact, it's one of the big things that actually drew me to Kaiser Permanente is that when we talk about health, we obviously talk about the physical health and all of its manifestations, and that makes sense, and certainly mental health, particularly now with all the needs. But what I really found interesting is KP will then often go beyond that and say, but we got to think about total health, meaning financial, food, housing, and the whole philosophy is, if you're familiar with the Maslow's hierarchy, if you will, right? This is applied to kind of a healthy life, which is you're not going to be too good at managing your prediabetes condition or your high blood pressure if you're worried about having a roof over your head, where the next meal is going to come from, or if you're exposed to gun violence on a regular basis. And so the definition of total health from a community perspective, I thought was very powerful. And what's great about the organization is then it's one thing to think that way. We then put our money where our mouth is. And so from an ESG perspective, we've spent, for instance, $185 million in the last number of years on affordable housing. So it's not just saying it's important and putting into your health model. It's spending upwards of $200 million, and we're going to be going beyond that in the next couple of years. And we've produced over 10,000 affordable homes for people in our communities. We look at food, and we've created a very innovative approach to, we know a lot about our members. We know where they live, we know what their income levels are, we also know a lot about their health needs, nutritional needs, and we were able to connect low-income members with food subsidy programs in their region. And so we've connected now over $100 million of food subsidies to our members in those areas of need. And so it's taking that ESG agenda beyond kind of the traditional environmental pieces that you might see. You know, by the way, we do pretty well there. We just spent $3 billion with a B with diverse suppliers in 2021, and that was a huge increase in that focus there. And then on the environmental side, we have over 7 million square feet of LEED certified square footage in our facilities, which is, I think, by and far the most in our industry. And so from both a traditional ESG perspective, adding, of course, the equity, inclusion, diversity agenda we spoke about, but then that kind of total health element around food and shelter, I think is a pretty powerful combination. We're a not-for-profit, so that is a big leg up on not worrying about a quarterly earnings call or stock appreciation, which I respect a lot of companies do need to worry about. But still, when we go back to our mission, which is delivering healthcare for the communities we serve, our belief is keeping them healthy. It's part of our whole integrated model, which is a belief of if you can keep people healthy and actually deliver health care, not sick care, right? We don't see them when they're sick. We actually spend time preventing illness and getting up ahead of the stream. It's better for the individual, for sure. It's better for us from an outcome perspective and financially. And so it's a good model. We've proven it now empirically and within the confines of healthcare. And I think our belief is if you take that out a concentric circle or two and wrap in these other elements that we know influence overall health, that the same kind of value proposition plays out over the long term.
The E and the S part of it often fall inside CHROs, either their knowledge base or their experience or what they're putting together for the company to execute those kinds of desires from shareholders.
I think as CHROs and as HR communities, we do kind of own our employee brand, if you think about. And we know, the cliche of war on talent is, quite frankly, just never more important than today. And not only that, but our customers want to know that they're doing business with a great company that produces results, but also has the best people to serve them and healthcare for us. So, so for us, it's about hitting all of those things and making sure that we provide a culture and environment to attract the best talent, to develop the best talent, and to retain the best talent. We have a great mission in healthcare. We get up every day and service our customers and patients and change lives. But also, we are recruiting people to join our organization, and having this really strong employee brand and living up to it, I think is a pretty exciting place to be.
I think the starting place for this is we do it not because of societal expectations. We do it because it's important to us. It's important to our employees, and it's important to the sustainability and future of International Paper as a company. So that's the starting point. What's important? We have a number of different areas, goal areas. We have 8 specific targets that we think about. They're in the normal areas for a manufacturing company. We have greenhouse gas, we have areas in water conservation, et cetera. There are 4 of the 8 that I get directly involved with. We have a circularity of products goal, meaning we want it to be reusable, compostable, recyclable. I'm on a council in the company. I don't know a lot about products necessarily, but I have a very strong perspective on what expectations of communities are around that. I help to chair the EHS Council. We have a goal around zero incidents, zero safety incidents. We believe that's really critical. Diversity is one of the goals, and community involvement, changing the lives of 100 million people by 2030. And so, why do companies get into this? I can tell you why we get into it. We believe that those are components of success. They're going to be integrated into the entire success of the company, and making sure that not only are we achieving success, but we're doing it in the right ways, including the right people.
In the CHRO role, you have a lot of stakeholders. The board is one of them, shareholders another one, colleagues, etc. everyone has to deliver for shareholders. That's what we have to do as a company. It's not just the board. And if you are focused on the business reasons, the reasons for your customers, your colleagues, and your community to have diversity, have an environment where people feel like they can belong, show up and be at their best, continue to grow, and that we can support the communities in which we live and work, that does generate shareholder value and does generate engagement and greater customer service and better partnerships, et cetera, because we're representing those people that we serve. And we couldn't do what we do and be who we are without that being put into practice day in, day out. And it's a pretty easy conversation because they see that. I think at a basic level, you have to feel like you have a responsibility as a corporation. We employ many, many thousands of people globally. We have an impact on so many consumers and customers, and we take the weight of that responsibility seriously. So the convincing, again, is figuring out what works for us and what is our responsibility, and then taking people along in that journey through our action. So there are 3 areas that we focus on in ESG and have been doing so in, I think, a really serious way since 2020. We've had a long history again around CSR, but from an ESG perspective, there's 3 things that we're very focused on: promoting diversity and inclusion, and the $1 billion commitment, the additional $3 billion that I mentioned by 2025. So a lot of actions across colleagues, suppliers, small business, our communities, a very holistic, integrated sort of business strategy to make those investments. The second area is really advancing climate solutions. And in any way we can, we're assessing what our imprint is and where we can do better and where we can help drive change. And we have lots of actions that people can read about in our ESG report there. And then the third thing is really building financial confidence, which is very much at the core as well of who we are and our values. If we can build financial confidence, whether that's small business, individuals, et cetera, that's really where we play. And the convincing, I think, is really in what you do and what the outcomes are, and being patient with it, but also highlighting that along the way and ensuring that you're bringing people along with you, because I think it's pretty hard to argue with the value once you're brought along with those outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, we've got several, but 2 of our aspirational goals is being a model of inclusion and diversity in our community and being stewards of our environment. And those are important for us. And it's actually important for investors. You know, we have recently named a chief sustainability officer. He's been with us for a while, Harold Jones, who is one of the absolute best in that field. And he's actually presented to investors. And so they're interested in what are we doing around ESG. And what I love about what Eaton and Harold are driving is, you know, it's built in science. We do a sustainability report every year. And even as he's presented to the investor community, what we hear back is not only are they putting out the words, their actions are in support of it. And you think about our business, what some of our key initiatives are: electrification, energy transition, and digitization. So it's core to our mission as well to be a steward of the environment. Now, the S part is what we control, right, in terms of the HR community with the support of the business. And that's always been, you know, adding that in is not new. It's now contained in the ESG, but it's something we've been doing all the time. Having, again, diverse perspectives, ensuring that we are a learning organization for our employees. I think all of that in the ESG environment is incredibly important. And, you know, again, do what you say you're going to do, be able to prove it, and then base it in science. And so carbon reduction and not only for us, but for our customers, it's incredibly important. I mean, think about, you know, what we're seeing today in terms of the environment and climate change. And so being on the front end of that, and it really is such a big part of our mission. You know, how do you think about the grid? You know, how do you put electricity back on the grid? How do you move away from fossil fuels? I mean, those are important for not only just the sustainability of Eaton, but the sustainability of the world. I think what helps us is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a part of our mission. If you think about electrification in our vehicle business or in aerospace, I mean, what electrification really means is reducing the carbon footprint around so many different industries and areas. And so, because it's core to our mission and it's a part of our strategy, however the financial profits turn, that goes with it. You know what I mean? So it's important to our future growth of the company. So where it might change for some, just depending on the financial outlook of the company, it's too core to us to change that. So, I don't see that ever being an issue in terms of funding or those kinds of things. I mean, we have demonstrated, and you go back and look, that, since I've been there at least, and I've been a part of it, we have absolutely done what we said we were going to do. And we've been through, actually, think about it, we've been through these markets. I mean, 2020 wasn't pretty for anyone. Go look at what we've done. We still stayed focused on sustainability. And it's because it's core to our
more
mission.
and more, and this is a big trend we've seen in the last 3, 4, 5 years, as we think about recruiting and bringing in top talent and bringing them into the company. More and more, those candidates are interviewing the company as much as the company is interviewing them. Tell us about your values. Is it just a poster on the wall, or do you really mean it? How do you show proof that you're really doing it? Are you an inclusive community? Are you being environmentally responsible? And candidates are more and more using that as a decision factor on what company they're going to go to, which is a good thing for companies and for them and for society over the long term. And so if you think about over the long term, if you want to have a strong, stable organization that attracts top talent, you have to be high performing from a values and social responsibility standpoint. The other aspect we see is that more and more in sort of business to business environment, that other companies are checking and sort of testing and vetting companies they're going to work with about their values. So it's not unusual for us if we're selling our products to another company that we'll get a very large supplier qualification form that'll talk about our values, our inclusion, our sustainability, all those elements as much as our ability to produce and deliver. And so from a business imperative standpoint, it's about your talent, and more it's about your ability to actually have partnerships and transact with other companies.
You just listened to another CHRO conversation. Today we were treated to thought from 8 leading CHROs about their ideas regarding the role of ESG in modern organizations. On behalf of all of us who are associated with the Master of Human Resources program and the Center for Executive Succession here at the University of South Carolina, thank you for joining us.